make way fools for the digital DM. World record holder for most powerful BM. All the ladies love it when they see his live streams, impressed by his knowledge of D&D 5e. He's got diaries, tutorials, he's a king among men. Put your hands together for the digital DM. Actually, his name is David, not... Shut up!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Digital Dungeon Master Podcast. We're already in episode number 6. And in this podcast, it's all about inspiration, baby. That's right. We're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition inspiration. And I'm going to talk about what is inspiration, how to use inspiration, how to gain inspiration, and if you're a Dungeon Master and if you run a lot of D&D 5e games like myself, then we're going to talk about how to reward your players with inspiration. And we're going to go over a bunch of options, bunch of optional stuff too. So sit back, grab a drink, get a bio, pause it if you need to get a bio. And download the podcast and then go get a drink. Oh, anyways, I digress there. So 5th edition, when 5th edition came out, it announced that there was going to be a new reward called this inspiration. And I like it. I like D&D 5e. You guys know I love 5e. And of course I play it all the time. But inspiration is a nice addition. It sort of reminds me, it's sort of like, it's like a perk. You know, what is inspiration? It's a perk, it's a benefit. And it's a benefit like you would get bennies in Savage Worlds, or maybe if you're a 4th edition fan like myself, you would get milestones and you would get like a perk called an action point that you could take another action. So it's a nice addition to D&D 5e. And you can read all about inspiration in the Player's Handbook in Chapter 4. And there's a bunch of optional stuff and how to reward your players with inspiration. Also in the beautiful Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition in Chapter 8. I think it's in the toolbox. So what does inspiration do for you? So if you're new to 5th edition, you'll probably learn a little bit from this podcast. But if you're a savvy veteran of 5e, you probably know what inspiration is and all that stuff. But listen anyway. Listen anyway. And download the podcast, like I said. All right, so inspiration, according to the Player's Handbook, it gives you advantage on any attack roll, saving throw, or a skill check. And if you don't know what advantage is, you roll twice, and you take the highest roll. So if you roll a 7 and a 17, you'll take the 17. That's what advantage is. It's really nice. Also in the Player's Handbook, you can, if you have inspiration, you can give your inspiration to other players. You can inspire them. This might actually encourage roleplay also. It does in my groups. You know, I love roleplay. My players know that I love roleplay. And sometimes when the players pass their inspiration around, it kind of inspires them to do a little bit of roleplay. And I really like that. So is inspiration going to be good for your game? You know, it's totally up to the Dungeon Master. You know, I will say this. Inspiration is very powerful because it grants advantage. And advantage in D&D 5e, especially with the rule light mechanic system, the low numbers, advantage is very powerful. So, you know, if you're going to play something dark and gritty, maybe a sword and sorcery, Conan the Barbarian type of setting, maybe you might not want inspiration in your game. It's totally up to you. It's up to you, the Dungeon Master. So if you want it, use it. If you don't want it, you know, don't use it. There's nothing saying, there's no rule etched in stone in the 10 Commandments of the Player's Handbook that it says you have to use inspiration. You know, and you as a Dungeon Master, it's your game, it's your world, you do what you want to. And then the player handbook also states that you can have one inspiration at a time, which I've changed it a little bit in my games. I've allowed my players to have multiple inspiration. But you don't have to do that, and we'll talk about that later on in the optional stuff. So if you're playing around a table, unlike what I do, I usually just play on a virtual tabletop, so I'm spoiled with all of the, calculations of to hit and saving throws, and Fantasy Grounds taking into consideration failed saving throws for full damage, half damage for successful saving throws. I love it. But if you're playing around the table, how are you going to keep track of this inspiration? Use poker chips. You can use poker chips, you can use bottle caps, you can use anything you want. I even think that there's some official 5e stuff from WizKids out there where you can buy inspiration chips and stuff. So that would be cool to use that stuff around the table. It'd be like throwing the chips at the Dungeon Master or the inspiration chips and saying, hey, I'm rolling inspiration. You hit him in the eye or something like that. But you can keep track of that stuff around the table and around the virtual tabletop. So how do you use inspiration? How do you use this, Dave? You keep talking about all these cool perks with advantage and rolling double and taking the highest. Well, how do I use it? Well, basically, before you roll, this is what the player handbook states. Before you roll, let the Dungeon Master know that you want to use your inspiration. Now, take into consideration, if you're in a heavier role-playing type of game, take into consideration the DM may ask you how you've become inspired. Maybe a past event, or maybe a battle that you were in previously. Maybe you're a soldier or a battle cleric or something like that. How were you inspired? Maybe you'll have to tell a little story. But I like that because it encourages role play. And like I said, I would expect that if you're, hopefully your Dungeon Master ahead of time will tell you, hey, this is going to be a game that has a little bit more heavier role play than what you're used to. So I would expect that. And also, if you're playing around the table, here's another little hint for you. And also around the virtual tabletop. It's a little bit harder, especially with Fantasy Grounds. I wish that they would change the advantage die to see if advantage really works for you or not. I'm talking from a visual standpoint. But if you're around the table, it's super easy. Just use a die with a different color. So if most of your normal rolls are with a black 20-sided, get a different colored die for your advantage. Like get a red one or something like, or a yellow one, whatever. That way you can actually see if the advantage is working for you. So if you roll your black and your yellow die, and your black die is that 7, and your yellow die, which is the advantage die, is that 17, then you can say, wow, hey, advantage actually worked for me, which is actually pretty cool. I wouldn't roll 2 of the same color die, because I want to see if advantage is actually working for me. I mean, technically it will or it won't, but I want the visual representation of that advantage die. So how do you gain inspiration? You're talking about, you're probably wondering, okay, you've already talked about what inspiration is, how you can use it. Now, how do you gain this stuff? And there's a lot of different ways that you can gain inspiration. And especially when we talk about the optional stuff down the line, there is a endless amount of possibilities for inspiration, if you think about it. But when you gain inspiration, you've done something good. The DM gives you this as a reward. Although there is some optional stuff that you can solely rely on the players to reward inspiration. I don't do that as a dungeon master. I like to be the one that controls the rewards, because I'm the one running the game, right? Or if you're the one running the game, you want to make sure that your player is rewarded. You just don't want the players just throwing inspiration out for no apparent reason, because that's probably going to happen sometimes. But you want to make sure that this inspiration is a reward. You want the player to feel like, wow, I've actually done something good to get this inspiration. And you usually get it for, doing some great role playing. Maybe you had a great idea. Maybe you had a great tactic for an upcoming battle. Maybe you took a huge risk and you dove in the middle of 20 kobolds. Maybe you took a huge risk and you wanted to have a role-playing encounter with the king or the noble, and you wanted to help defend the city. And you couldn't do it by yourself, but maybe you had this social interaction with an NPC, and you were successful, and then they helped bolster the defenses of the town. Maybe even it was something funny or something stupid that you said. I've done that before as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can gain inspiration. Now, I start my games where everybody gets one inspiration. You don't have to do that. I mean, that's something optional. But just take into consideration your dungeon master, he or she, they may or may not start you with one. I'm actually playing in a game on Wednesday night where there's very little inspiration in this game. And I actually kind of like it because it goes back to the core of it. Advantage is powerful in 5e. So I think the dungeon master that the game that I'm playing in realizes that. And I think that's why there is not a lot of inspiration. But you're the DM. It's your world, baby. You can give out as little or as much inspiration as you want. I'm a pretty free-flowing dungeon master. So the inspiration usually flows in my games. And, your dungeon master, like I said, he may even allow you to award inspiration. Just be careful of that, though, dungeon masters. I don't really recommend that, but that is an option. But I don't, like I said, I don't recommend it. So just kind of play that by ear. So that's how you gain inspiration. By doing something good. You basically impress your dungeon master. So all you dungeon masters out there, let's talk about DM's awarding inspiration. And let's also talk about some options for inspiration. So when you're a DM, how do you give inspiration? Is it like I've mentioned, is it the great role-playing? Is it the great idea, the great tactics? Is it taking that huge risk? Is it even saying something funny? How do you reward your players? Like the player handbook states, you reward your players for role-playing within the boundaries of their background traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. I've done that on occasion, but I kind of go more by the cuff of it. Because I just don't want to sit around waiting for my, I'm just not fidgeting. Okay, I'm waiting for them to role play their perfect bond, or I'm waiting for them to role play their ideal, because chances are you're going to be waiting a long frickin' time for that. And I don't do that. I just go by the role playing. I go by the good ideas and stuff. Plus you have to take into consideration out there, dungeon masters, every single player that you will ever have in your game role plays differently. Some players love to role play. Some players hate to role play. Some players just love to kick indoors and roll initiative and ignore role play. Let's face it, that's the reality of Dungeons and Dragons. There's no rules anywhere stating that you have to role play. But if, like I said, if you get with your players ahead of time, tell them that this is going to be a role-play heavy game, be upfront with your players, hey, that's how you can reward it. But take into consideration, your players are all different. And as a dungeon master, I reward my players on how they role-play. And sometimes, if I have some of my combat-heavy players, Sometimes they'll crank up the role play a little bit. They'll surprise you once in a while. So reward them with an inspiration. Don't say, "Wow, wow, you're actually role playing." Don't say that, because I don't think a player would like to hear that in the first place. But just reward them every once in a while if they role play. Maybe as a dungeon master, maybe you can kind of go back and maybe reward them an inspiration every combat or something. I usually don't do that because I have enough inspiration flowing in my game in the first place anyway. So maybe it's a combat. Maybe it's a victory. Give them an inspiration for a victory. Like I said, maybe one of the players had great tactics. Maybe the whole group came up with this elaborate plan to defy the odds of being outnumbered by the goblins or the kobolds 5-1, and they actually won. Reward them for that great tactic. If they use the terrain around them, if they set up any kind of traps, that warrants great inspiration. Maybe even they ran from an encounter. I mean, let's face it, if you're level 2 or 3, and you have to encounter like a beholder or maybe an adult dragon or something, let's face it, the players aren't going to win. Take, for instance, my Saturday night game, The Ghost of Dragonspear Castle. They weren't going to beat Thoth the Black Dragon. He's an adult black dragon. They were level 3 at the time. There's no way in hell they were ever going to beat Thoth. But with that great roleplay and then bringing back Seer, the hatched dragonkin, the hatched baby dragon of Thoth, and the successful roleplay, I rewarded them with inspiration. I rewarded them with loot. And I rewarded them with leaving the dragon lair with their lives. Because Thoth could have killed them all. And I mean, face it, one round he could have killed everyone. So maybe they ran from something. Reward them. Because you can run in D&D. It doesn't happen very often. But reward them. I mean, that's smart. You know what I mean? Maybe they talked their way out of combat like they did on Saturday night. Talking their way out of dying because Thoth was going to kill them. But as soon as Thoth had seen his baby dragon, the negotiations started. And even though Thoth is chaotic evil, and of course I don't like alignment tags, he's evil as hell, he still saw that his baby dragon was back. Shalene, his mate, wasn't going to be pissed off. His egg was back. His baby was back. Things were good. He rewarded the players. Therefore, I rewarded the players as well. So maybe they talked their way out of a bad situation. So maybe these solo risk, moving on by the way, these group risk, these solo risk. Remember in 4th edition, way back then, everybody's favorite D&D edition, there were these skill challenges. You should incorporate those into your games. It utilizes skill checks. And it promotes group work. It encourages groups to work together to, have a goal. It promotes a group of players to overcome a challenge, overcome an obstacle. Maybe sometimes it's overwhelming odds. Maybe they're if it's a group type of risk, maybe they're out on the Sword Sea, and they're on this, this huge wooden ship called the Slowpoke or something. Maybe there's a huge storm. Maybe a lot of the ship's sailors were thrown overboard. Maybe the party will help overcome this horrible situation. You as a DM, you can kind of go by this on a whim or on the fly, and you can just do some skill checks with all of the party members involved, and hey, maybe they'll ride out this storm. Maybe they'll have enough knowledge, seafaring knowledge, to where they can help get through this storm, help the captain of the ship. Award them inspiration for that. If it's a solo encounter, maybe one of your players is being chased by a bunch of guards, and then it goes to rooftops. And he's jumping from roof to roof, he or she. That could be the possibility to give inspiration. Hell, you can even give inspiration on the fly. Say that, hey, you're doing so well, or you guys are doing so well with this. Why don't you guys just give me inspiration? You guys are inspired right now. Give me advantage on rolls. Players will like that too. Award it on the fly. Don't even give them the option of telling you when to take advantage and when they're inspired. Just say that, hey, you guys are inspired. This round, for all your checks, you guys are inspired. Seeing each other work to get through this problem, to get through this predicament that you're in. Reward them inspiration right then and there. I've done that before. Social encounters. All you DMs out there, my favorite, social encounters. That audience with the king or that audience with the noble. You know, like I was saying earlier, maybe this town that your group is in is going to be invaded by orcs or some other dastardly creature. Maybe the noble, maybe the king doesn't think that this is going to happen. But you have intelligence, maybe, you know, some type of street knowledge or something. Maybe you found out that they are going to attack the town. And this social encounter, this role-playing encounter, you're going to try to persuade or talk this noble or king or leader into bolstering up the defenses. Hey, call out the militia. We need to get ready here. There's orcs on their way. Stuff like that. Reward inspiration for that. Hell, even if they're not successful, at least they came up with the idea to maybe talk to this leader, this noble. Reward them inspiration for that. So there's a lot of ways out there, Dungeon Masters, you can reward your players inspiration. I always think that there's my personal opinion as a Dungeon Master, and I've only been doing this 6 years, Dungeon Mastering, although I've been playing since '84. I consider there's 3 types of encounters. There's combative encounters, there are social or role-playing encounters, and then there's exploration encounters. So come up with a bunch of ideas on how to incorporate those into the game and reward your players for those 3 different types of encounters. Inspiration. Players love inspiration. They do. You know, especially, just don't go hog wild with it. Don't give them, you know, inspiration for every single little thing they do, because then they're going to expect it. Just kind of, you know, come up in your head with, maybe I kind of want to try to give each player 1 inspiration a game. So I always usually start my players off with 1 per game. And then I go ahead and I try to give at least 1 inspiration. So you can all, you know, as a DM, maybe you only, and we're going to start getting into the optional stuff now. So does your, you know, like I said, does your game really need, I mean, like I said, this is optional. Does your game really need inspiration? You know, you're playing some dark, gritty type of setting like Shadow of the Demon Lords, or maybe some type of sword and sorcery. It may not work. You know, if you're playing a game with a lot of magic and, you know, a lot of spells and a lot of magic items, yeah, go for inspiration. It's perfect. But if you're playing something gritty and dark, you know, maybe you might even consider not even using inspiration. Just let the rolls fall where they may. You know what I mean? Here's another optional thing. Do you want to start your players off with 1 inspiration each game like I do? I do that. I think it works nice. And then I also let them accrue up to 3 inspiration. So I let them have up to 3. You don't have to do that. Like I said, this is optional. And if they don't use it, they lose it. So use it or lose it, sister. You know, if they have 3 inspiration at the end of the session, they're basically SOL. Because it resets back to 1. But it's your game. You know, you can allow them to carry over if you want to. But that's what I do in my games. If you have it to where, here's another option for you. if you have a maximum of 1 inspiration, which is in the player's handbook, by the way, if you award inspiration to a player that already has inspiration, allow that player to give that inspiration to some other player. But if all the players have inspiration, obviously, they're not going to be able to share it. But then again, you need to tell your players, as a DM, say, hey guys, don't be afraid to use your inspiration. You know, and I've had my first D&D 5e campaign when I back in 2014, when 5th edition first came out and I started running Horde of the Dragon Queen. My players never used inspiration. I mean, they never did, and I told them, use your inspiration, you will get more. But they wanted to hold on to it for that perfect moment. But just tell your players, look, use the inspiration. Don't hold on to it. You know, don't save it for the big boss at the end. Because that's what a lot of people will do. I mentioned before, do you want to allow your players to award inspiration to each other? Granted, yes, this could take one layer of stuff off of the things you have to do as DM, because let's face it, as a DM, you've got a lot of stuff going on. And rewarding inspiration is just one more thing that you have to do. And sometimes you may forget to think, hey, maybe these players need an inspiration here. Maybe this is a good time to give a reward. And sometimes you may forget. I've done it. I'm sure every dungeon master out there has done it, because you're going to screw up from time to time. So do you want to allow the players to be the ones to award the inspiration? Take this one task off of your plate? I wouldn't recommend doing this, but it's up to you. It's your game. But be careful though. If you're gonna do that, I would say just be careful. Especially if you have a group that is more tactical and is just kicking in doors and killing stuff. You may not want to do that, because they'll just kind of give the inspiration, because chances are they're tactical and they're going to want to give the inspiration at the perfect moment when they could use it. Now, if you have, on the other hand, on the other side of the coin, if you have heavy role players, they're in it more for the story, then I think that's when it would work, for when you allow your players to be the ones to award the inspiration. I think it would work more with a heavier role-playing game and a heavier group of role players. So, but just be careful though if you're going to let the players award that. So here's another optional thing that I've done in my games. I award myself DM inspiration. And actually sometimes my players will just even say, hey Dave, that was awesome. Why don't you give yourself an inspiration for that? So, you know, the players get to have fun with all this inspiration. What about you? What about the king of the game? What about daddy? You know what I mean? So let yourself have some DM inspiration. I usually I give myself 1 inspiration for every player that's in the game for that night. So if I have 5 players in my game, I got 5 DM inspiration. This allows you to have some fun as a DM too. You know, maybe you want to have some advantage on some attacks. Maybe you want, when you're doing some contests behind the DM screen or in the dice tower if you're using Fantasy Grounds, maybe you want to have advantage on a couple of your role play roles or combat roles. So think about DM inspiration. So let's step out of the box here. Let's brainstorm and let's take inspiration a step further. Maybe you want to be able to use inspiration as a currency. Maybe you want to allow your players to purchase some perks. Players will love and they'll embrace this, believe me, because they have in my game. I've come up with a couple. And I'm going to name a few that I do. And like I said, you can expand. The possibilities are endless for inspiration, honestly. If you think about it, it's your game. You can do whatever you want. So come up with as many or as little rewards as you want to. Now, in my games, I allow my players to purchase a hit dice heal with their inspiration. And I allow them to do this, if it's in combat, I allow them to do this with a bonus action. And when they take the hit dice heal, it doesn't cost them one of their hit dice heals anyway, because you only get a certain amount according to your level anyway. So maybe you'll allow them to take a hit dice heal. That could be a get out of jail card free, I mean, hell, my players use those from time to time. Maybe you have casters that are out of spell slots. Maybe you want to allow them to buy a first level spell slot with an inspiration. That's a pretty good idea. Do you want to, and especially think about it, seeing that we're thinking out of the box here, if you allow multiple inspiration like myself, maybe you'll allow them to buy 2 hit dice heals for 2 inspiration if they have it. Or maybe you'll let them buy a 2nd level spell slot with 2 inspiration, or a 3rd level spell slot with 3 inspiration. That's very costly. But I think those are good perks that players can use. I usually let them do something like that one per game. So it's not like every time they save their inspiration, they're just going to buy that spell slot or they're just going to buy that heal. So kind of limit it. If you're going to do something like that, you don't have to limit it, but I do. I limit that kind of stuff. I think the upgrading the spell slot with multiple inspiration and upgrading the heal, I think that's a pretty good idea. The players, like I said, the players will embrace this. And what this does is it breaks the mold of the core mechanics of the game. I don't think it breaks it to where it damages the game. Hey, a hit dice heal or a first level spell slot, that is not going to break the game. I don't even care if you are the biggest rule monger or you're the biggest rule lawyer out there. There is no way a first level spell slot or a 1 hit dice heal is going to break your game. Especially in D&D 5e. I mean, the odds are overwhelming in a player's favor anyway. So 1 spell slot or heal is not going to hurt. And like I said, your players will love this stuff. They will embrace it big time. And plus, if you're always doing inspiration by the book, just where you have to just tell the dungeon master where you feel inspired, it gets a little boring after a while. I'm going to be honest with you. I like the way inspiration is in 5th edition. I do. I love it. I played that way for years, but then I kind of felt that it got a little stale in my game. So that's why I started incorporating a lot more of this optional stuff. And when I did that, the players were like, wow, Dave, you should have did that years ago. I was like, yeah, I think you're right on that. And then finally, let your players come up with some ways to use inspiration. More minds are better than one. There's a lot more ideas. I'm sure, yes, as a DM, you've probably got a lot of ideas floating around in that intellectual devourer that you have sitting up on top of those shoulders. But let your players come up with some ideas too. You may be surprised. Maybe you will allow them to re-roll attack rolls. Just on the whim, I've done that. If they can woo me enough, I'll let them spend inspiration any way that they want to. Maybe they had a bad roll and you're like, oh crap. They're like, oh crap. Hey, Dungeon Master Dave, can I re-roll this saving throw? I'd be like, sure. But then I'd kind of ask them, how do you feel inspired? So I'll kind of bring up maybe a slight role-playing event in their past or something. Maybe they rolled bad on their damage. Maybe they'll ask you, hey, can I re-roll my damage? Or come up with anything. Like I said, guys, the possibilities are freaking endless for inspiration if you think about it. They really are. So I think that's going to be about it for inspiration. So now I have a couple of questions from you guys, the viewers and the listeners out there, about inspiration. And you can always tweet me. You can leave messages on Facebook. You can send me emails through my website, messages here on Podbean. There's all kinds of ways to get a hold of me. And I have 3 questions this week regarding inspiration. So DM Mongoloid, what a name, DM_Mongoloid asked me, hey Dave, do you think that all of your inspiration additions and perk break the game? And I'm going to be honest with you, DM Mongoloid, I love that. I could say that all day long, DM Mongoloid. No, I honestly don't think that it ruins or breaks in the game. I don't think it ruins the integrity a little bit. Just don't allow it all the time. Don't, like I said, don't give out 50 inspiration a game. Then you don't have to worry about it. But no, my games they're not low magic. They're not sword and sorcery. They're not Conan the Barbarian. They're not Shadow the Demon Lords. No, I run a lot of magic, a lot of spells, a lot of magical creatures. But no, I don't think it breaks the game. And plus, DM Mongoloid, the players love feeling powerful. So when they can use advantage a couple times during the game, during the session, I think they really like it. They're okay with it. They're even okay with using the inspiration for the heals and the spell slots. And like I said, I limit that stuff. I limit it to 1 time per session. But just note, like I said, this is not a sword and sorcery type of game. And if it was, then I wouldn't have any kind of perks in that type of game because I would want it dark and gritty. And I just want to let the dice fall where they would fall in that type of a setting. But no, I don't think it breaks the game at all, DM Mongoloid. Great name, by the way, man. I love it. I really like it. I may even name an NPC Mongoloid here pretty soon. So I've got another question from Brawler Rouge. Dude, I think you spelled your name wrong. Brawler Rouge is Rouge. Maybe he is a Rouge. I don't know, but Brawler Rouge says, "Hey Dave, you rock, Digital Dungeon Master. Keep up the great work." And then this is the best question of all. By the way, seeing that you have that glorious beard, are you a Papa Bear? Am I a Papa Bear? Are you serious, man? No, I'm not a Papa Bear. If you're wondering, but thanks for the compliment on my beard. I've been growing my beard since October of 2013, so it's been almost 4 years since I've trimmed it a few times, but I'm going for the ZZ Top look eventually, and it's going to take quite a few years to get there. But it's still growing. But thanks, Brawler Rouge. Get that name spelled right, by the way. Are you serious, dude? Brawler Rouge? Come on, bud. Tighten up over there. Spell that name right, please. So the Purple Leprechaun says that he has enjoyed my inspiration additions to the game. And he has also commented that he has stolen my ideas and he has incorporated them into his game. Hey, that's great to hear, Purple Leprechaun. It's nice to see other DMs out there expanding on inspiration. So I've got a winner. We have got a winner. Remember in the last Digital Dungeon Master podcast where I announced that I was going to be doing a giveaway for any kind of great ideas that you would have for the new gold store that I have on the Twitch channel. And I had a couple of people that actually left comments, either here on the Podbean comment section or on the YouTube comment section, like I was saying. So I had some pretty good ones. And the first one was by Michael Warren, and he thought that it was going to be cool to allow viewers to purchase in-game items for the players. He thinks that's a pretty good idea. And he's talking about just basic things that could be included into the loot parcels or, whenever you kind of award loot for the adventure. But it would be, just minor mundane items, he said. Maybe some potions or maybe even some role-playing items like the alchemy jug to get some mayonnaise. Because everybody loves the alchemy jug, right? I try to have one in every one of my games. I like to see what they do with that, the players, that is. So that's a pretty good idea, Michael. I think I might have to do something like that. Roger Carroll, he brought up, how about some quickies? And what he meant by quickies, not like as he wanted to get in my pants or anything, not that type of quickie. But he was talking about short 5 to 15 second sound bites, or any kind of maybe sound bit like the cavalry charge, or maybe a circus theme, or the Imperial March from Star Wars. And I think that's a great idea, Roger. I really do. But unfortunately, with all the copyright and all that crap that Twitch puts out and YouTube, everybody's scared of getting sued for, any kind of sound bit. So that's a great idea, Roger, but that's not going to be able to happen because I put stuff on YouTube and stuff. I would get my hand slapped so fast for uploading anything like that, because when you upload something onto YouTube, it basically has algorithms, and a song sounds a certain way, and if those algorithms match up into their database, they're going to say, oh, you've got this song, and unless you're the owner of the song, the rights owner of the song, that you can't put it up there. So yeah, good idea though, Roger, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. Now Chow, he had a wonderful idea. And Chow is actually going to win the Devon Knight token pack. I'm going to give Chow, and I'll contact Chow in PMs through the Podbean site. But he had a great idea to where, seeing that there's nothing really in rules for deities and stuff, maybe there could be a buyable perk with gold to where the player character can do some type of prayer to his deity, or something like that, and the viewers will actually answer him. And I like that idea. It would be a pretty expensive perk. It would have to be, but maybe the purchaser can act as his deity, and then the viewer can interact with the player. I think that is a wonderful idea. So Chow, I'm going to give you the Devon Knight token pack, and congratulations on that. Now I've got a couple of other comments that are on YouTube. I've actually got quite a few. You guys are really kicking up the interactive communication between the podcast site, the YouTube comments, and also tweeting me and sending me emails and stuff. So Josh Murdoch on YouTube, he wants to be able to purchase and summon bandatas, which is my musical troubadour that I've had in certain games. It all started way back years ago, I think in about 2014 or so, when the Tyranny of Dragons Adventures League came out, Season 1. And I put bandatas in there, which is a total ladies' man. He wants to be able to summon banderas, because Josh, I don't know if you've seen, but that is actually, the perk name is called Stay Thirsty, my friends, because that's what he would always say, because, I love that Most Interesting Man commercial. Even though I think they got a new guy now, Stay Thirsty, mi amigos, I don't like that guy. I like the old guy. I want him back. So, yeah, fire that new guy. I don't like him. So, Josh, yeah, you can already summon bandatas. You can do that with Stay Thirsty, my friends. Topless Amazonian. Now, that is a great name. That is a great name. And Topless Amazonian, he's only able to watch the live streams from time to time. I guess he works like third shift or second shift or something like that. He loves the gold system. He loves it. He said he loves it. He loves what he's seen. So thanks, Amazonian. Topless Amazonian. That's a name that you won't forget. And then there's Summer McMack. She's a new viewer. She's in Twitch quite a bit. She loves Omi Barton, by the way. She'd probably take her top off and flash Omi Barton, too. I mean, in a game setting. Because she always says she loves Omi Barton. So maybe we'll put that into one of the misadventures of Omi Barton coming out. I'm not talking she's actually literally going to do it. I'm just going to say from an in-game role playing standpoint, maybe we'll do that. So don't take that the wrong way, Summer. I'm not telling you to do that at all. But that would be pretty cool if she was out in the crowd and she would do that for Omi. That would be pretty cool. But she's only been watching the streams for a little bit. She likes it. But she had a concern on the automatic 1 and the automatic 20. And I thought about that also, Summer. But I think if you only allow it like maybe once a game or something like that, I don't think it's going to hurt the integrity of the game. I think it's pretty cool to use for that aha moment, But yeah, but I see where you're coming from, Summer. And I'm not going to allow 20 of those, automatic crits in one session. I just won't do that. So there you go, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Congratulations again to Chow, the winner of the Devon Knight Token Pack. And I hope you guys get involved with these comments. And it was really nice to see all of the interaction on the YouTube, because I post this on YouTube. I also put it on Podbean and on iTunes. And leave comments in the comments section. So my next episode, the topic will be down in the comments section. And if you have any questions about that particular topic, feel free to leave a comment. And then next time I'll answer all of your questions at the end of the podcast like I did this time. Even if you have any comments, I even like to see nice things. I mean, even if you have any constructive feedback, leave it in the comments section. Because the Digital Dungeon Master podcast is still new. This is only my 6th episode, and of course I'm still learning this. So if you have any feedback, let me know. Even if you want to send me an email through my website, you can tweet to me, you can leave a message on Facebook, you can leave a message on Twitch. There's a ton of ways of getting hold of me. Take advantage of them. So there you go, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Episode number 6 of the Digital Dungeon Master podcast. It's all about inspiration, baby. I hope it helped you guys out a little bit. I enjoyed doing this podcast. This is actually fun. So until next time, everybody, happy gaming and keep it savage.
This is the end of the program. Oh shit. Oh bloody hell. That was exactly what I said a minute ago, but expressed in a different way. Looks like I'll have to go. Yes, but where? And read a book or something.